The Karcsi Identity. Written, directed and performed in 13 episodes by Jesse Rowe. Chapter 11. The Code. Karcsi stood at the base of the Arc de Triomphe, his eyes darting around the chaotic scene. His mother Sarah sat in a broken computer chair, her prosthetic legs battered and bruised, no longer fitting properly. She looked exhausted. Karcsi's gaze settled on an old Citroën 2CV, its driver's door missing, but with keys still in the ignition. "Mum, look!" he shouted over the chaos. "We'll hide in the car!" She nodded, her face pale but determined. "Get me in there, Karcsi! We have to move fast!" Karcsi quickly manoeuvred the broken chair closer to the car. He helped his mother into the passenger seat, her body sagging with exhaustion and pain. "Stay low," he instructed. Then he scrambled across her into the driver's seat. A sharp crack rang out, and Karcsi's eyes darted to the top of the Arc de Triomphe. "Mum, there's a sniper!" Shots from the sniper tore through the fabric roof of the 2CV, leaving gaping holes. Karcsi and Sarah exchanged a glance, then decided to pull the fabric back completely, exposing them to the open air but removing the danger of getting caught by the collapsing roof. Karcsi's heart lurched with concern. "Maybe we should just hide here until the sniper goes away." His mother shook her head, her eyes dark with a grim certainty. "The sniper won't go away until everyone's dead. We don't have that kind of time." He put his hands on the steering wheel. He had never driven before, let alone in a situation like this. His hands shook as he turned the key. The engine spluttered. And spluttered again, and then roared into life. "Mum, I don't know how to drive," Karcsi admitted, panic creeping into his voice. Sarah placed a reassuring hand on his arm. "I'll guide you. Just follow my instructions. First, push the clutch down with your left foot and move the gear stick to first." Karcsi followed her instructions, but the car stalled immediately, lurching forward and then jerking to a stop. He tried again, this time managing to get the car moving, albeit with a lot of grinding gears and jerky starts. "Keep moving," Sarah urged, her voice tight with fear. We've got to get out of here." He stalled again. "Keep your foot on the gas and don't stop," she screamed. Karcsi's eyes were wide with terror, and he tried to follow her instructions. The car hit the ground with a final jolt, and he floored the accelerator. As they dodged petrol bombs and raced through the streets, Karcsi struggled to maintain control of the car. Karcsi's eyes darted between the road and the rear-view mirror. Behind them, a line of white police cars were closing in, their lights flashing ominously through the smoke-filled air. The streets ahead were a labyrinth of overturned vehicles, burning debris, and panicked protesters. The 2CV swerved through the narrow streets. Karcsi's inexperience was fairly evident in the jerky, erratic movements of the car. They narrowly missed parked cars and piles of debris falling from the local windows. The rearview mirror showed the terrible horde of teenage boys closing in. "Mum! Help! I'm stalling again!" Karcsi's voice was a desperate wail. "Push the clutch and shift to a lower gear," Sarah shouted, her eyes flickering between the mirror and the road. "You can do this, Karcsi!" The car lurched as Karcsi fumbled with the gears once again, but he managed to keep it moving. Sarah could see the fear in his eyes. He was fighting, just like she was, to survive this nightmare. Suddenly the police cars reappeared, their lights flashing as they closed in from other directions. Sarah's heart sank. They were trapped between the police and the relentless teenage boys. "Turn left now!" Karcsi obeyed, the 2CV skidding around the corner and into a narrow alley. The walls closed in around them, and Sarah could see the end of the alley was blocked by a barricade. "Mum, what do we do?" Karcsi's voice was a choked whisper. "Just keep driving. We'll have to find a way through." Sarah's voice was firm, but inside she felt the cold grip of fear tightening around her heart. They burst out of the alley and into a wider street, but there was no refuge. The protesters and the police were clashing violently, and the air was thick with tear gas. "They're too fast!" Karcsi cried, his voice breaking. I can't lose them! Just keep driving! Don't let them get close! I'm trying! Turn here! As they turned a sharp corner, No! What is it? They suddenly faced a steep set of stairs about 50 meters high, leading down to a lower street. Mum! Hold on! Sarah gripped the edges of her seat. her knuckles white. Just take it slow and steady! Karcsi eased the car onto the top step. The 2CV lurched forward, and the descent began. Each bump and jolt sent them flying out of their seats. The missing driver's door made it even more precarious for Karcsi, who struggled to keep his balance and hold on to the steering wheel. Mom, I think I'm going to fall out! He cried, panic rising in his voice. Sarah reached over, grabbing Karchi's arm with a fierce grip. You're not going anywhere. Just keep driving! The car bumped and rattled down the steps, the sound of metal scraping against the stone filling the air. The old Citroen groaned under the strain, but held it together. Karchi's heart pounded as he fought to control the descent. Finally, they reached the bottom, the car bouncing onto a flat road. We made it, he said, his voice shaky. Sarah released her grip on his arm, her own hands trembling. Good job, son. Now, let's keep moving. As Karcsi and Sarah sped down the next narrow Parisian street, a group of athletic teenage boys ran alongside the car, their faces wild with desperation, their eyes glazed. They shouted and tried to jump into the open driver's door, their hands clawing at the edges of the door frame. Karcsi wanted to tell them to go away and leave them alone, but he didn't speak French. I wish you could say stop and go away! He shouted in frustration, his voice catching in his throat as the boys continued their frantic attempts. Leave us alone! He shouted. Mom, what do I do? What do I do? He cried, feeling helpless as he struggled to communicate with them. That's it, she said as she pulled out of her laptop from her bag, her hands shaking. Karcsi was stunned to see that it was intact. The screen flickered into life as she opened it. Sarah's expression mirrored his shock. A mix of relief and urgency etched across her face. I can't believe this thing still works, she muttered, opening up the app with practiced efficiency. Her fingers began to fly over the keys. I need to see if the syndicate is controlling people here, she muttered. Karcsi glanced over, the car swerving as he did. Mum, we need to focus on driving. I need you. I am focused, she replied, her eyes glued to the screen. Just keep us moving. Karcsi peered at the screen, confusion and anger rising within him. What is it? Sarah's fingers flew across the keyboard. This app is controlling people's minds. This app has access to the neural implants they use to control people. You can deactivate the implants or even issue new commands to counteract the violence. You cannot be serious, he shouted, anger in his eyes. They chose Paris as the centre for testing. With recent elections and the upcoming Olympics and the constant unrest, no one would suspect a thing. It was the perfect storm. Karchi's jaw clenched. And you knew about this. You knew and you didn't tell anyone. Yes, that's what they have done. Don't say they, Mum. You were involved in this. His voice a clenched teeth whisper. Sarah's eyes filled with regret. I'm sorry, Karcsi. I thought I could stop it from the inside, but everything spiraled out of control faster than I expected. Tears welled up in Karchi's eyes, a mix of relief and anger. But you could have stopped this sooner! I know, Sarah whispered. But we're stopping it now, right? And that's what matters. Karchi's mind raced. A whirlwind of emotions threatened to overwhelm him. Anger, betrayal, fear, all battled for dominance. But above all, there was a burning need to end this madness. What do we do now? He asked, his voice taut with frustration. Her face grew pale as she saw the data. What is it? It's not just the police and a couple of rioters anymore. What do you mean? Karcsi asked, eyebrows low. They've done it. They've actually done it. It's quite a feat, really. What is it? I don't understand, Karcsi said. Don't stop, Karcsi. You've got to keep going. Keep going. Tell me what's going on. They managed it. They got everyone. Everyone. She shouted. And then her tone shifted. 2.5 million people in Paris are being controlled right now. She began hacking into the system, trying to disrupt the syndicate's control. For a brief moment it worked. People stopped in their tracks, confused and disorientated. But then the system reasserted itself. 2.5 million people? Mum, they're still chasing us! Karcsi shouted, panic rising in his chest. Sarah's fingers flew across the keyboard, desperate, trying to regain control. Just keep going! What is it? They're coming! We have to find a way to stop them! She smacked her head. They've just updated the software. Right now? Right this second? I have to find a new button for the master override. It should allow us to shut down all the implants all at once. Karcsi nodded, his eyes not turning from the road ahead. There was a long pause. She said nothing. He kept glancing from the road to her and back. I found it!" she shouted after what felt like an eternity. "But there's a fail-safe. If I disable the implants too quickly, it could cause permanent brain damage to each and every one of them." "Then do it gradually," Karcsi replied, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. "Start with the ones closest to us. We need to create a safe zone." Sarah's fingers flew across the keyboard, entering commands and bypassing security protocols. Sweat dripped down her forehead as she worked, the weight of their survival resting heavily upon her shoulders alone. She began to deactivate the implants in the immediate vicinity, hoping it would stop the violence around them. The effect was almost immediate. The gunfire outside began to taper off. The frenzied screams also stopped, and their faces began to be blank, as those around them dropped their weapons. The rioters and police seemed disorientated, as if waking up from a nightmare. "It's working," Sarah said, her voice filled with a cautious hope. Karcsi risked a glance at his mother, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. Keep going! We need to spread the effect!" As they sped down the Champs-Élysées, there were too many people. The relentless crowd closed in. The old, the young, even children, all with unblinking eyes, pursued them with an eerie determination. Karcsi's hands were slick with sweat, and the car stalled again. The pursuing mob was dangerously close. "Mum, I can't do this. I can't keep up. No. They've shut me out." Sarah's laptop suddenly locked her out of the system. "I need a new way to stop them." "What is it?" "They put a lock on the system, a new system." "Woman syndicate. They've done it." "I'm no longer in their system. It takes a new password. It's not even in our alphabet." Karcsi glanced over and saw strange symbols flashing on the screen. "Mom, those symbols. I recognize them. From where?" Recalling the dream he had been having, as he continued to drive, he quickly typed in the code from his memory, but his shaking fingers hit the wrong keys on the touchscreen on the unfamiliar alphabet. The screen blinkered red. "I messed it up!" Karcsi shouted, his heart pounding. The crowd was nearly upon him. Climbing into the car, Karcsi stopped the car, hands trembling. "I have to try again," he said, his voice steady. He typed in the code once more, carefully this time, as the mob began to climb in and hold onto their shoulders and pull them back. The faces of the controlled people were just inches away when he hit the final key. The screen blinkered green, and Sarah pressed the big stop button. Immediately, everyone froze in their movement, their eyes returning to normal. Sarah glanced anxiously at the laptop, unsure of what the Parisians would recall once they awoke. But for now, escape was paramount. For now, they were safe. Driving until the car spluttered to a stop, they slid from the dented car. They left the now dead laptop behind on the back seat. Karcsi gently carried his mother to a bush by the roadside, where they quickly reattached her battered prosthetic legs. With the strength born from his desperation, he straightened them out as best he could. The titanium legs were solid, and bending them caused blue bruises on his forearms, but they faded almost instantly from the regenerated body. Hand in hand, they traversed flat fields, wildflowers brushing against their legs in the spring breeze. As they walked, they soaked in the sun's rays and breathed in the free air deeply. For hours they had run and driven the streets of the grey smoke-covered city, and now surrounded by fine fields of flowers. They felt a heavy weight lifted, but Sarah was silent. She did not have the peace in her heart like Karcsi was able to grow. Sarah's voice broke the silence, her tone hesitant. "Karcsi, there's something you must understand about Paris, and why it's become ground zero for all this madness." Karchi's eyes searched hers. He stopped and slowly span around to look at her clearer, directly face to face. Sarah took a deep breath, her words measured. I was involved in developing the mind control technology. Paris was the chosen testing ground. You were really part of all this? He could not comprehend or want to. There was involvement and there was leadership. He hoped that she had only taken a minimal role in all this destruction. I never imagined it would escalate like this, her voice heavy with regret. It was meant to prevent wars, to save lives. But talk with the marsh. She twisted it. Paris was chosen for its resilience, its ability to endure. But now, the city is a canvas for her experiments. Who knows what she's capable of, or what she will do next with the city? Karchi's mind reeled with disbelief. Her voice was strained. Controlled? Just like everyone else? The syndicate manipulated those with power and money? She took money from all those in the world with extra cash. People like Zuckerberg, Soros, Gates, Cook, all under Dr. Marsh's influence. Everyone who opposed her ideas vanished. The faces from the folded page on the train flashed into Karcsi's mind. Those were the faces, the people that we all eliminated. Sarah nodded solemnly. Yes, but you, Karcsi, you were never part of this. You never harmed anyone. But when I was in the helicopter, what happened? Sarah's voice softened. I tried to get you off that, but the Prime Minister, the Prime Minister of Bohemia, he noticed you, and he just pushed you off, and he stabbed me too. I could not stop. I'm sorry. Well, I'm better now, he said with half a smile. Well, that's Dr. Marsh's idea, to give you the regenerative blood cells. She's so evil. But sometimes, evil deeds have a way of hurting evil people unintentionally. I'm glad you healed quickly. I'm glad it was only a small scratch and you were alright in the end. I tried to wipe that memory from your head as much as I could, but some memories turn to dreams, and some dreams are hard to erase. Someone's watching over me. I wish others had someone like you. They walked for another hour in silence. Neither knew what to say or even tried with fear would trigger hatred or unrepentant thoughts. From the cover of a small forest they spotted a barricade. Look, there's a lockdown up ahead. No one can contact the outside world about what happened in Paris. Dr. Marsh, she has people in the satellite community and turned all satellites facing away, and so all phone calls and live streams were restricted. No one knows at all what has happened, and now I doubt they ever will. Mom, we have to let the world know. Yes, my boy. Let's go through this fence and find a phone or a computer and tell people. Though I doubt many people will believe us. Crawling to a perimeter fence, Karcsi's strength tore a hole through it, allowing them to slip through unnoticed. They watched as a couple of cyclists approached the barricade. The two Frenchmen paused and watched silently. One young police officer noticed them from the corner of his eye and mechanically turned and ran at full speed at them, and with open arms wide knocked them down and grabbed them and dragged them into a black van. Seizing the moment, they grabbed the bicycles and pedalled northward. They rode for hours upon hours upon hours. Then, kicking up the dust, they skidded to a halt. Karcsi abandoned his bike, scaling the grassy sand dune to gaze at the cold expanse of the English Channel. He fell to his knees. So that's the sea, he whispered, scooping a handful of sand and letting it slip through his fingers. His mother joined him, her gaze distant. Have you never seen it before? He shook his head silently. Well, there's better beaches out there than this one, she murmured, a faint smile touching her lips. How do we cross? Karcsi asked, scanning the distance. Can we swim? Sarah hesitated. Aye, we could, but not me. They say you need turkey fat and rub it all over you to stay warm. And there's jellyfish, sharks, and big boats, obviously. Disheartened, Karcsi played with the sand. Silence stretched between them until he realized his mother was gone. Panic rising, he searched frantically until he spotted her lone figure on the beach. He hurried down through the sharp grass, each step painful. She stood in the flotsam of the waves, shoes in hand. What are you doing? He asked as waves lapped at her feet. Sinking, she replied softly, eyes fixed on the horizon. For the tide to take me? This place, it creeps me out, Karcsi admitted, flicking wet sand with his toe. As rain began to fall in Dunkirk, they looked across the vast water in hope to find a way across. How do we cross? Karcsi wondered out loud. Sarah scanned the area, Further down the beach, much further, she noticed a group of migrants attempting to board a small orange boat, bound for what must be England. They ran across the soggy sand and waited in the queue in the shallow waves to embark upon the boat. They could see the faces joining from the diverse group from North Africa, the Middle East and Central Asia. Silence hung heavy as they waited, the orange inflatable boat wobbling uneasily in the water. Sarah squeezed Karcsi's shoulder reassuringly. The roar of the engine masked their nervous whispers. The small, orange inflatable vessel bobbed violently on the choppy waves, its hull seeming too flimsy for the dark, menacing waters of the English Channel. Karcsi gripped the side tightly, whilst his mother clung to him, her prosthetic legs awkwardly positioned. Cold sea spray stung their faces. The driver, a young man who looked barely older than Karcsi, handled the boat with visible unease. His eyes darted nervously, betraying his inexperience. The passengers' mistrust of him growing with every jolt and swerve. Judging ferries and navigating unpredictable waves, the English Channel was huge. The driver struggled to maintain control. The distant lights of the English coast grew brighter. Police patrol boats and officers stationed upon the shore loomed ominously, ready to intercept illegal crossings. As they neared the shore, the driver gestured urgently for everyone to jump overboard and swim to safety. Karcsi and Sarah exchanged a weary glance. Their mistrust of the driver was becoming more and more evident. The urgency in his eyes left no room for hesitation. Not now. Reluctantly, each passenger obeyed, until an elderly woman hesitated, trembling with fear. The driver, determined, lifted her, and then they all plunged into the cold water as the boat turned quickly and sped back towards France. The icy water stole their breath and numbed their limbs. Karcsi and Sarah kicked frantically, the weight of their clothes dragging them further down and down and down into the darkness. Gasping for air, they fought the waves, every stroke a struggle. Finally they stumbled onto the beach, covered in salty, heavy clothes, and raced to the dunes. Some, including the elderly woman, were not so fortunate. The police caught them, their shouts fading into the distant darkness. Karcsi and Sarah ran, their hearts pounding and lungs burning. They didn't stop until their bodies gave way, and they rolled off the dirt track road into a ditch. There they fell into a deep sleep.